Hello, everyone, and welcome to my lesson 4 discussion presentation on the learning methods of humans and dogs. I'm actually going to start with dogs, though, because the provided example that we had to do with a husky that was learning to say the phrase, I love you. And to say how I think this was done, or how I think it would be achieved, is through a lot of cognition and latent learning, as well as some operant conditioning and behaviorism. Because the dog would be using modeling, or the people would be using modeling to teach this dog how to say the phrase by modeling the phrase for them auditorily, saying it again and again so that the dog can hear and observe the sound and be capable, hopefully, of repeating it. And then they provide positive reinforcement or rewards for the dog when the dog is able to successfully produce the desired response. And I have some more examples of this with my father's dog. But first, we'll look at some observational learning with the dog, because my dog Pico, or my dad's dog Pico, she always loved to go outside with my dad, whether he was going to go outside to walk her or if he was just going outside to do his stuff. Because he really liked to go outside to drink coffee, and he developed a habit of doing that because he used to like to smoke while he was drinking his coffee. So he would always go outside because he was comfortable doing that while he was drinking his morning coffee or his afternoon coffee. And Pico would use observational learning to figure out when he was getting ready to go outside based off of him preparing his coffee. And it was something as simple as the sound of him stirring his coffee mug with that metal spoon, because he always used this metal spoon. And Pico could be all the way on the other side of the house and hear that and know that it's time to go outside. Like it was almost like a dinner bell, except it's a time to go outside bell or something like that. Because he would always, like, that's the last step of preparing his coffee. He pours his milk in, stirs it up, and then he's ready to go outside. So we started observing that after just a few weeks of her being at home with us, is he'd start stirring his coffee, and she would run to the door and just wait there for him, which was a neat example of observational learning and developing habits based off of that. And then my dad also used a lot of operant conditioning and behaviorism to teach Pico, because obviously he would punish her if she was performing in an undesirable way. Typically, he would do this by simply lowering his voice and becoming very, very intimidating to her, scaring her to make sure that she knew that this is the kind of response she would receive if she did something that was undesirable. Like, he would let her know who's boss and basically say, no, don't do that, because this is bad and you will not like it if you keep doing this. And he would, on the opposite end, he would reward her with treats, or by, telling her good girl, like they did in that video with the husky, to reinforce her good behavior. If she was, behaving well when we had guests around, or she was making sure to go outside before she went into the bathroom or something like that, or to make sure she was quiet during quiet times, things like that. He would always reward her. And one of my favorite examples of this operant conditioning is when Pico was young, she really liked to chew on toys and shoes and things like that. So eventually, my dad had the idea of attaching all the items she destroyed to her collar and forcing her to wear them and carry them around after she destroyed them. After only about a week, she completely stopped chewing things and she never did it again because she hated that experience. I guess it produced some kind of a shame, or she just really didn't like carrying the things she destroyed around. But it worked very, very well. It was a very good example of a punishment slash negative reinforcement. And I'll use this to segue into human learning because my father also used a lot of positive and negative reinforcement when he was teaching me and my brother how to behave properly. And similarly to Pico, he actually used the same collar trick with him because when we ate dinner, he would usually be the only one that left any kind of like napkins or plastic cups or something laying on the dinner table. And so he made him a necklace and started attaching his dinner garbage to it and made him wear it around. And he received almost the exact same results that he did with the dog, to our surprise. And yeah, it was a little undignified, but it is ultimately harmless and effective because he stopped. But he would also obviously he would reward us when we were doing well. Like good grades in school meant we got a little bit of an allowance, or we got this toy that we really wanted, or we got to go to a place that we'd been wanting to go to for a while. Or he would just take a day and spend a day with us and just have fun with us, things like that. Um, but if we were doing poorly in school, he would say no to a lot of the things that we wanted. He would just start saying no. He wouldn't give us as much freedom to do the things that we wanted to do. And in the case of like good or bad behavior, he responded to those things by like sending us to our room if we were being bad, or just sending us to a corner and complimenting us when we were behaving in a more socially acceptable manner or in the desired way. And in the case of humans, many of us go to school, and there are a few different types of learning in school. There is a little bit of conditioning, but that's more in younger ages of students for the same reasons that my father was trying to teach us good social behavior and things like that, because a younger student may not know all the things that are professionally acceptable in a public setting. And so sometimes there are systems set up with younger students to help condition them through negative or positive reinforcement or punishment and reward to get them to perform in the way that the teachers or the school staff desire. This occurs less as with older students, I believe, but there's still elements of positive and negative reinforcement because we're often told as students that by performing well in school, we increase our chances of performing well in life and being able to do the things that we want to do. And on the opposite side, we are often told that by performing poorly in school, we increase the chances that we won't really get to perform the way that we want to in our life. We won't get to have the things that we want, go the places we want to go, and that life will be harder. So it continues to encourage us, even as we get older, to perform well. But there's obviously the largest component of learning in school is probably a lot of modeling, repetition, and observational learning. That's part of what studying is. We observe and we record and memorize material. And depending on the subject, we may have that material modeled for us so that we can respond with something similar and practice it and repeat it until we become proficient in it. And then another example I wanted to use for learning in humans is the kind of learning that is used by social media and advertisers. Because in many cases, those companies want to get a desired outcome from a customer or a user. They want a user to continue interacting with their platform, or they want a customer to purchase their product. So they often use a lot of positive reinforcement to achieve this. Advertisers will say, like, if you purchase this product, you'll improve this part of your life, or you'll receive these kinds of benefits. And there's always smiling people on the screen and things like that. These attempts at producing a desire in the customer that otherwise they would have no reason to have at all. They would have no incentive for. And in the case of social media, Sometimes there's even the potential for, I mean, obviously, advertising can shape human behavior because it creates a desire in a human to own something. But social media can shape human behavior in kind of a similar way because, again, it uses a lot of positive reinforcement and it brings people to want to continue to interact with that platform, but it can also push people towards certain views on certain issues or certain doctrines or stances in situations. And that in turn can influence how they behave not just on social media but elsewhere in their life. And that is a little bit of shaping and a little bit of conditioning in that way. And it's even more effective on younger people because of how impressionable they are. In the same way that it's good to teach people things when it's young, when they're young. Like I know this even as someone who was previously, in or very recently in high school, because going through grade school, it was a lot easier to start trying to learn other languages. But now I'm trying to look at other languages now, and I'm finding it more difficult because my mind isn't the same sponge that it was when I was younger. But that's beside the point. The whole point of this part is that social media is very effective with that sponge of a mind in producing certain viewpoints or shaping certain behaviors in younger people. And this actually concludes my presentation for the lesson for discussion. Thank you all.